Invitation was sitting in my email when I got home from a double shift, still in my work clothes, still smelling like disinfectant and bad coffee. I almost didn't open it. I almost just left it there unread, the way you leave a voicemail you already know is going to ruin your night. I opened it anyway. It was from my sister-in-law. The subject line said, "Save the date, Quentin and Audrina's grand opening. My brother's restaurant." The one I had loaned $42,000 to make happen. I wasn't on the guest list. I read the email 3 times. Then I set my phone face down on the counter and stood there in my kitchen for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my upstairs neighbor walking back and forth across his floor. I kept waiting for some other explanation to arrive, like maybe this was a preliminary draft, maybe my name had been accidentally left off, maybe there was a second email coming right behind this one that said, "Of course you're invited, we just forgot to add you." That email never came. Let me back up, because if I just tell you what happened that night, you won't understand why it hit the way it did. You need to know what came before. My brother and I grew up in a small house in Tucson, Arizona. Our mother worked nights at a hotel laundry for most of our childhood. Our father was in the picture until he wasn't, and after he left, there was a particular kind of quiet that settled over the house. Not peaceful, just empty. The kind of quiet that means nobody's fighting anymore because nobody has the energy to fight. I was the older one, by 3 years, and in families like ours, being the older one means something specific. It means you figure things out first, and then you reach back and help your sibling figure them out too. It means you learn how the utilities work and which bills are the important ones and how to cook pasta with whatever's in the cabinet. It means you don't talk about what you're carrying because there's no point. I loved my brother the way you love someone you grew up surviving with. Not softly, not from a distance. It was the kind of love that was woven into ordinary things, making sure he had lunch money when our mom forgot, sitting with him in the ER at 2 in the morning after he broke his wrist playing soccer with kids from the next street over, driving 4 hours to help him move out of a bad apartment at 22 years old when I had work the next day, and did it anyway. When he told me he wanted to open a restaurant, I was 31. I had been working in healthcare administration for 6 years. I had a savings account I had built slowly and carefully because growing up without money teaches you to hold on to it with both hands. I wasn't rich. I was stable. And there is a difference. He called me on a Tuesday night and walked me through the whole plan. He'd been cooking seriously for years. He'd done a 6-month stint at a restaurant in New Orleans. He had a location in mind, a corner space in a neighborhood that was starting to come up. Good foot traffic, reasonable rent. He had a menu. He had a name. What he didn't have was capital. He needed $42,000 to cover the security deposit, kitchen equipment, initial inventory, and the first 3 months of operating costs while the business found its footing. I asked him for the business plan. He sent it that same night. I spent 2 weekends going through it, asking questions, doing research. This was not a casual decision. I am not someone who makes casual decisions with money that took me years to save. In the end, I said yes. I transferred the money in 2 installments. I did not ask for anything in return except that he pay me back over time when the restaurant was profitable, and that he keep me informed about how things were going. He agreed. We hugged about it. My sister-in-law cried a little. She said she didn't know what they would have done without me. That was 14 months before the night I opened that email. During those 14 months, I watched from a careful distance. My brothers sent updates sometimes. Pictures of the space being renovated, a photo of the new walk-in refrigerator, a short video of the kitchen staff during their first full rehearsal dinner. I didn't hover. I didn't show up uninvited. I had loaned the money because I believed in him, not because I wanted a piece of the spotlight. What I did notice over those months was a particular shift in the temperature of our relationship. Small things at first. A text that went unanswered for a week. A family dinner I was told about after the fact. A holiday where the plans changed and no one thought to loop me in. I told myself it was the stress of opening a business. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself that once the restaurant was up and running, once the pressure was off, things would go back to normal. I told myself a lot of things. My sister-in-law was the one managing the front-of-house operations, the social media, the PR, the guest list for the grand opening. She was organized and detail-oriented, and she had strong opinions about branding. She called the restaurant a curated experience. She talked a lot about the vision. She had started referring to the whole project as our baby, and I understood what she meant by that. I did, but something about the way she said it made me feel like I was standing on the other side of a very thick piece of glass. Once, about 6 months in, I drove by the space on my way home from work. The new sign was up. It was beautiful, actually, simple and clean, the name in dark green letters on cream. I took a picture and sent it to my brother. He replied 4 days later with a thumbs-up emoji. The grand opening was scheduled for a Saturday in October. It was going to be an evening event, invitation only, followed by a soft open to the public the following week. My sister-in-law had been posting about it on Instagram for months. The photos were gorgeous. The whole thing looked like something out of a magazine. I assumed I would be there. I don't say that with bitterness. I say it the same way you assume the sun will be up when you open your curtains in the morning. It was my brother's restaurant. I had made it possible. Of course I would be there. The email arrived on a Wednesday. The guest list was attached as a PDF. I scrolled through it looking for my name and it wasn't there. I checked again, then a third time. Then I searched the document for my name specifically. Not there. I sat with that information for 2 days before I said anything. I kept waiting for a follow-up, a separate email, a phone call, something. On Friday afternoon, I texted my brother. I kept it simple. I asked if there was a separate list I should be looking at because I hadn't seen my name on the one that came with the save the date. He didn't answer that day. He texted me back Saturday morning. He said the opening was going to be a tight, curated crowd, his words, or maybe her words coming through him, and that they were keeping it to people connected to the restaurant industry, investors, press contacts, and close friends. He said he hoped I understood. I read that message standing in my kitchen, same spot as before, same refrigerator hum. Close friends. I had known my brother for 31 years. I had carried him through things that would have broken other people. I had written him a check for $42,000 and never asked for a contract. And I was not a close friend. I put my phone down and I did not respond. I went to work. I came home. I made dinner. I watched something on TV that I don't remember now. And somewhere in the back of my mind, very quietly, something that had been holding on for a long time finally let go. Monday morning, I called my bank. I want to be clear about something. This was not an impulsive decision. This was not me throwing a tantrum. I had spent the weekend thinking carefully about what the money had meant, what it was still meaning, and what I was actually doing by leaving it there. The loan had never been formalized. There was no contract. There was no payment schedule that had been honored. In 14 months, I had received exactly one partial repayment of $2,000. There was a paper trail of the transfers. There were texts and emails that documented the agreement in broad terms. What I had, functionally, was an informal investment in a business whose owners had just made it clear that I was not someone they wanted in the room. I didn't call my brother first. I didn't issue an ultimatum. I contacted my bank, spoke with a financial advisor, and began the process of formally requesting repayment of the outstanding $40,000, citing the documented agreement and the absence of any formalized repayment structure. It took 3 business days for the letter to arrive at their address. I know exactly when they received it because my brother called me at 8:15 on a Thursday morning. He didn't say hello. He said, "What is this?" I told him it was a repayment request. He said I was being insane. He said I was doing this to sabotage them. He said the restaurant couldn't absorb a sudden demand like that 2 weeks before opening. I said that I understood the timing was difficult. He said my name in a way I had never heard him say it before, like it tasted bad. I said, "You told me I wasn't a close enough friend to attend your opening. I think that means we need to formalize what this relationship actually is." He hung up. My sister-in-law called an hour later. Her voice was very controlled, the way a person's voice gets when they are saying rehearsed words instead of real ones. She said she was sorry I felt excluded. She said the guest list had been a difficult process and they'd had to make hard choices. She said she hoped I could understand that this was a business event and not a personal slight. I let her finish. Then I said, "I'm sure you understand that my financial decision is also a business decision and not a personal slight." She didn't have a response to that. My mother called that afternoon. The This is the part where it gets interesting because my mother had been told a very specific version of events. According to the version she had received, I had agreed to come to the opening and then, at the last minute, invented a reason to be offended so that I could pull the money as leverage. She used the word leverage like it was something I had done to them, not a word that described what they had been doing to me for 14 months. I asked my mother if she had seen my name on the guest list. She went quiet. I said, before anyone came up with a version of this story where I'm the problem, did anyone mention to you that I hadn't been invited? She didn't answer that question directly. She said family needed to support each other. She said I should think about what I was doing to my brother at a vulnerable time. She said she didn't want to take sides. I said, "You've already taken a side. You just called me." I kept my voice calm. I didn't cry. I had learned a long time ago that in my family, crying was only useful if someone in the room cared about your feelings. And in that moment, I was not confident that was the case. The grand opening happened without me. I know this because I saw the photos on Instagram. The space looked beautiful. The food looked incredible. My sister-in-law posted a long caption about the village it takes and the love that built this place. There were photos of my brother in the kitchen, grinning, holding a pan. There were photos of guests I didn't recognize, industry people I'd never met, a local food blogger I had been following for years. I looked at those photos for a long time. Then I put my phone down and went for a walk. The repayment demand had forced them into a corner they had not anticipated. I had done some research. I knew that restaurant loans of that size, pulled at the last minute with a documented trail, were not something they could easily absorb or quickly replace. They had been depending on the stability of that arrangement. They had built their opening budget around it. What happened next came in stages. First came the anger, the calls from my brother, the messages escalating in tone, the accusations that I was vindictive and jealous and had always resented their success. I read those messages the way you read a document, in a language you're still learning. There was meaning in there somewhere, I was sure, but it kept slipping away from me. Then came the intermediaries. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 2 years called to tell me I was destroying the family. An aunt sent a long text about forgiveness that I read once and didn't reply to. Someone, I still don't know who, told a mutual friend that I had always had it out for my sister-in-law, which was so invented I almost laughed. Then came the silence. A long, flat silence that lasted almost 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks, I went to work. I made my coffee in the mornings. I called my own friends, the ones who had watched all of this unfold from the outside, who had listened without needing me to perform certainty I didn't feel. I slept reasonably well, which surprised me. And then, 3 weeks after the opening, my brother called again. His voice was different this time. Not the controlled anger from before, not the script his wife had written for him. He sounded tired. He sounded like himself, the version I had grown up with, the one who used to sit at the kitchen table at midnight doing math homework neither of us fully understood. He said the restaurant was struggling to cover its next month's rent without the financial cushion I had provided. He said he'd been thinking. He said, and I want to be precise here because the exact words mattered. He said, I think we handled the guest list wrong. Not I'm sorry I hurt you. Not what we did wasn't fair. Not you deserve to be there. We handled the guest list wrong. Passive voice. Institutional language. The kind of thing you say when you want credit for admitting something without actually admitting it. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, tell me what you think you handled wrong. He was quiet for a long time, and then, slowly, he started talking. Really talking. The way we used to talk when we were kids and there was no one else in the house and the night was long and the only thing we had was each other. He said his wife had been the one to finalize the guest list. He said he had seen my name wasn't on it and had told himself it was fine, that I wasn't that into social events, that I would understand. He said he had not asked her to add me because it would have caused a fight and he was exhausted and he had let himself believe that I was the kind of person who didn't need to be asked. He said, I used the worst of you as an excuse. The part of you that's always okay, always fine, always managing. I use that to not deal with it. I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. Here is the thing about being the person who is always okay. People forget that you got there. They see the stability and they assume it was always there, like a natural feature of the landscape. They do not see the years of work it took to build it. They do not see the mornings you talked yourself into getting up anyway, the nights you sat with your own fear and did not broadcast it, the 1,000 small decisions you made to keep yourself functional so that you could be useful to the people you loved. They see the result and they call you sturdy, and then they lean on you without asking if you're tired. I have been tired for a very long time. My brother and I are still talking, not like before. Not yet, and maybe not ever in exactly the same way. Some things, once you see them clearly, don't go back to looking the way they used to. But we are talking, and there is something honest in it now that wasn't there before. A little more careful, a little more real. My sister-in-law and I are polite to each other in the way that people are polite when they are both aware of what the other one knows. We do not pretend that a corner wasn't turned. We do not perform warmth that isn't there yet. Maybe it will come. I am not in a hurry. The repayment is on a formal schedule now, documented, signed, monthly installments that arrive on time. So far, the restaurant is open. From what I can tell, it is doing reasonably well. I have not been back since the night I stood outside and took a photo of the sign. Someday, maybe I will go in and order something and sit at a table and eat a meal in a room that my money helped build. Or maybe I won't. Maybe that's not the ending this story needs. What I know is this: I am not a wallet. I am not background support. I am not the kind of person you call when you need the loan and forget about when you're planning the celebration. I spent too many years believing that love meant making yourself small so that someone else could feel large, and I am done believing that. You are allowed to expect to be in the room. You are allowed to say, if my name isn't on the guest list, my money isn't in your account. You are allowed to choose yourself without it meaning you have stopped loving the people who forgot to. That is what I learned in the year my brother opened a restaurant and forgot to invite me. Not bitterness, not revenge, just the quiet, stubborn knowledge that I matter, that I have always mattered, and that it was never my job to convince anyone of that, least of all the people who had known me longest. I rinsed my coffee cup that morning and set it in the drying rack, and I felt, for the first time in a long time, completely and simply free.